Estamos aqui para mais um episódio do podcast do Jovem, onde eu, Tomás Sampaio, mais conhecido como Jovem do Vinho, convido personalidades do vinho aqui no Brasil, e essa temporada é especificamente sobre importadores. Esse episódio é diferente, porque ele vai ser conduzido em inglês, mas fica aqui com a gente e se você precisar, tem a legenda aqui embaixo. Vamos lá, hoje eu tenho o prazer e a honra de convidar não só um amigo, mas um cara que eu admiro muito pelo portfólio, pela filosofia, pelo jeito que ele trabalha. Pleasure to have you, Andrew, co-owner of Wines4U.
Thanks, Thomas. You switched over to English remarkably well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's my first time, you know. So, well, thank you for being here. We've had an ongoing relationship for, I think over a year now, and I've had the opportunity to taste several of your wines and understand more of your philosophy and more of you as a person, which is awesome. Can you tell us a little bit how you got into wine? I think everyone that is working in wine, that works in wine, has had a moment where they said, "Well, this is what I'm going to do with my life." So
it's a journey.
Exactly.
There's many different journeys. So I can start right back to when I was young. Wine was in our house. I was born in Sydney, in Australia. My father had a good cellar, a lot of classic Australian stuff, but also some really good French, German whites as well.
That's a privilege.
And wine was a real part of it, but it wasn't me. I was like, okay, they're drinking this wine, And I even remember on my 21st birthday, which is the big birthday in Australia, my father had a bottle for my birth year, 1970, I should say, of Penfolds Grange. Cool. He had from each of the birth year of his three children. And he said, "Oh, Andrew, come over here." And he was with his old friends. And we had, he said, I want you to taste this. And I went, yeah. I'll go back to the Jack Daniels and Coke, yeah? And he kind of laughed, and his friends laughed, and they said, more for us. But that was a couple of years later. I did what a lot of Australians do. We sort of backpack around the world. Mm-hmm. We end up living in London.
Okay.
So you have a visa for a couple of years, but you can't continue your career. I was working for a multinational company, and I got a job in a wine shop. Now, London is, traditionally has been the capital of fine wine. Whether it still is, I don't know. This is some time ago. Uh-huh. But every night they would open a bottle of wine, and I started to really think, wow, this is super interesting. It expresses expresses a place, something. Everything's different about each bottle that gets opened. And they were opening pretty good bottles of wine. This was in Notting Hill, which became famous for movies a few years after that. The wines we were drinking on the weekend weren't as good, but I was getting into it, and it was good. So, I spent probably about 9 months there pushing a trolley in the snow and all sorts of glamorous things. But I really got into wine, and then I travelled around the continent in Burgundy, funnily enough, Burgundy was a very different place then, but I fell in love with their wines, just like, this is fantastic. So then when I got back to Australia, I met up with my parents again, and he said, "You like a glass of wine?" And I said, "Actually, I do." And then it just became a passion. It was a passion where I studied, but wasn't working totally within the industry, but learnt a lot more. And then I think the thing that really got me was living in Hong Kong. Just as the taxes kind of disappeared, and a lot of I was in the wine society there in Hong Kong, and there were these guys who had these amazing cellars, which they brought over to Hong Kong because they had no tax now. After having 80% tax, they brought it over, and we just tasted amazing wines. And it was great because most of it was blind tasting, which is something special, I think, to get to know what you really like, and you sort of hide the label. Take the label out of the equation, and very interesting things happen. But I think the key thing you learn from blind tasting is you learn to know what you like.
Exactly. And the thing about blind tasting too is that I think the people that enjoy blind tastings are people that are not scared about being wrong. because usually you are.
I certainly
And the other thing is that it's people that are usually interested in the liquid, you know, and not the label, because at the end of the day, like, do you want to be drinking expensive label or a great bottle of wine? You know, and
they can be the same thing, but many times they're not.
Many times they're not, exactly. It's the difference between like price and value as well, you know. It's about having a great liquid and not necessarily a known label. And finding about wine that way too, because there are things that you probably wouldn't even taste if you looked at the label, you know. Yeah,
because you have a preconception, particularly if you know a bit about wine, you know a lot about wine, that can be even worse. You have this preconception, oh, this is the so-and-so, so it should be sort of like tick the boxes down the line, where blind you'll find some new things.
Which is interesting that we're talking about the preconceptions, because we're drinking a wine that isn't exactly dry, which is something that we just, you know, we're talking about just, you know, 10 minutes ago. A lot of people, I think, especially in Brazil for some reason, they think of wines that have a little bit of residual sugar, wines that aren't exactly dry, and most of them, you know, turn their noses. You know, they're like, I don't really want this. I don't even want to try this. You know, they do that with demi-sec champagne. They do that with some Riesling with residual sugar. They do that with this wine. And then for tasters like us that are interested in the liquid itself, we smell this, we taste it, go like, this is pretty damn good. So tell us a little bit, if you can, about this wine, why you brought it, but also about things that you've seen around the world when it comes to like things like residual sugar versus here.
Cool. So, Domaine de Belleviere, this is it's a part of the Loire Grand, but it's actually Loire. Okay, L-O-I-R. I mean, they don't make it easy all the time, you know, in terms of confusing people. But we're in the north of the Loire region, and it's a bit cooler. And these guys ferment their wines, very natural producer, but they ferment their wines to where nature takes them each year. So I just read about the 22, and it's bone dry, this wine.
Wow.
So they say that we the wines take us to where they want to be.
Cool.
So we've got 19 here. So wonderful thing about residual sugar is it's a journey, and it can be a long journey you can take with the wine if you have a few bottles. Right. So this started out significantly sweeter. I think we're talking 15, 18 grams. Okay. So it's not huge. It's not, you know, like Auslese in Germany, but it's sweet. Yeah. It's off dry. Yeah. But I've noticed already, you know, we're talking now 5 years on, the wine getting drier. You know, it gets more unctuous. I don't know. Yeah, it's so it's rounding out to the point where I drink old Spätlese, and they're essentially dry wines after 20, 25 years. Yeah. Wow. So, yeah, maybe you don't have a lot of time, you know, where, you know, people want to drink stuff straight away, but off-dry wines can be take you on a wonderful journey. Gastronomically, they're fantastic. Totally. Exactly. So something like a rich lobster with a cream sauce. Right. This is pure hedonism. Yeah, because the sugar will take up more of that fat too as well on the plate when you're doing a pairing. Very, very interesting. I was gonna say something. It's interesting for the people at home that when we talk about not dry wines, when we talk about demi-sec, when we're talking about semi sweet wines or sweet wines, it's not necessarily, they're not adding sugar. You know, it's not like people are adding sugar. Residual sugar is about having some remainder of sugar in the grape, which makes the wine sweeter. It's not that people are like, oh, let's put another tablespoon of sugar in the wine. You know, for the people at home that are just starting to explore new styles. But you can already see like a trace of development in the wine. You know, it's not tight. It's starting to show some tertiary notes. That's quite amazing. So this is a wine that you bring with Wines4U. So tell us a little bit about that. You talked about Hong Kong. You talked about traveling the world. How the hell did you end up in Brazil? My wife.
that seems to be like a classic story, right?
That's a common thing.
It's a common theme, exactly.
Brazilian women are very, very nice. Yeah? You know, it's a compliment. Okay, I'd had enough of the corporate life. I worked for an American company, same company that my wife Camilla works for 20 years, and I'd had enough. I saw that I've had to go further. I had to make a lot more sacrifice, and I was kind of like, this wine thing I've been doing, you know, that I'm passionate about, and you know, like the last place I lived was Amsterdam, and we had a wine tasting group there, always blind, always super challenging, with lots of different wines sort of thrusted upon you. And it was a really great intellectual exercise. You know, every Saturday I was looking forward to it, far more than the Monday to Friday in the corporate world. So it was kind of like, you know, I want to see what we can do to bring interesting wines to, whether it was going to be Australia or stay in Europe or Brazil. And Brazil seemed like a good fit for us. So,
oh yeah,
you know, I was able to step out and, you know, do something I loved. Camilla helps a lot in magic at time, we call that, outside working hours, yeah. But yeah, we wanted to bring interesting wines. You know, we really want to, for me, my wine journey has been an adventure. Yeah, I don't, you know that I love Burgundy and, you know, and I love a lot of the classics, but wine's an adventure as well. So, you know, for me, it's like, there's great wine out there that doesn't have a fancy label, but, you know, you talked about the juice inside. It's like the truth's in the juice kind of thing. It's sort of like, you know, what are people doing and taking as much care as they are in the more famous regions to extract something special out of their plot of dirt. Now, that can be a family, that can be a young winemaker sourcing grapes from people that he or she know that they're doing wonderful things. This is some guys who are off the radar until people know them, and then they're right on the radar.
Exactly.
So, like, you know, I saw a guy in New York talking about their wine, saying, "Wow, these," you know, because they make a Pinot d'Anis as well.
Oh, cool.
Which we import, which is a bit, you know, out of the box probably for this market.
Totally.
But, you know, I promise you that every bit of care that goes into whatever the finest Burgundy, Champagne, these guys are putting in.
That's so cool.
Equal to everybody. And that's, so you get to see really the expression of their special plot of land. They have like 12 hectares.
Wow, cool.
And they're super proud. You know, we're probably only 2.5 hours from Paris there, but it's France profonde, as the French would say.
Yeah.
It's like just place that time's forgotten, and they're still making exactly the same wines they always have. So they have vineyards that have never seen chemicals, never.
Wow.
So yeah, when you're up there one day,
I mean,
go and visit them. They're lovely people. The Nicolas family, yeah, truly lovely people.
I would love to. So how long has Wines4U existed then?
So it was 6 years.
6 years now, and it's so interesting that you say you talk so much about the journey, about the adventure, because, you know, I'm living it. You are living it. You know, you have lived it for longer than I have, but
yes.
But the thing is, you know,
don't rub it in.
I was thinking about this recently because people often ask me, like, where do you want to go with this? Like, what's the end goal of this? And often my answer is, it's this.
Yep.
This is it, because I get to explore new things every day. I get to meet new people every day, taste new wines every day. Like, it's about this. There's no place where you end up and you say, okay, now I'm there, and then what do you do when you're there? You know, so
I'm sure you've learnt a lot this week or so talking to, you know, a lot of the other importers.
Absolutely.
You know, they're all passionate about wine, and yeah, that's the journey for me, is to continue learning. Yeah?
So when you think of the journey that has been Wines4U and these 6 years is what you said, 6 years of the company, how would you describe these 6 years, like between opening the company, deciding that you were going to enter this market, and now? What were some of the highlights and maybe lows that you've had in these years?
There's no lowlights. No, look, the passion I've seen from wine lovers here to go on a journey with us, which has been lovely. Not everything's sort of been a home run, if we use American English terminology. Some things probably a little bit out there for some of the guys. probably a big disappointment was Australia. It didn't really take off. And I can understand why. If I look at it objectively, the price it's not a cheap place to make wine.
And the shipping is probably crazy as well.
Shipping's terrible. And almost a lack of enthusiasm to export as well. If I compared it to, say, our other new world place that we truly love is South Africa, a lot more enthusiasm to ship stuff there. You know, they're more export focused. But yeah, Australia was, you know, I kind of came in with saying, wow, look at this, you know, and somewhat the wine sold, but, you know, probably with less enthusiasm than I would have liked, because there's a great story about Australian wine, but to tell in Brazil, but maybe now's not the time to tell it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's so interesting that not only do you have to find the right wine and the wine that fits your portfolio, but also the wine that fits the moment that the country that you're exporting to fits, right?
Exactly.
Because, like, for example, you were talking about Pinot Diniz, which is a grape that I enjoy now. I remember tasting Pinot Diniz maybe 3-4 years ago. I remember I had a bottle of Robinot Pinot Diniz, and I tasted it and I was like, what the hell is this? And I didn't understand the wine. Like, I didn't understand the wine. And now I have several bottles of Pinot Diniz from Robinot in my cellar, for example, because I like them so much.
Absolutely.
But the thing is, sometimes you bring things, maybe a demi-sec wine, you know, maybe a Pinot Diniz, maybe a region that people are unfamiliar with, into a market that is still, I'm going to say, in development. And people just don't understand it. And the wine is phenomenal. And then you go to Paris, that's what people are drinking. But you come here and people just don't understand the wine. So it's really interesting to see that. And the other thing that I think is worth mentioning is about how the market works around the world. Because, for example, a place like Australia has a strong internal market. So for the producer, they're going, why would I go through all this trouble that is exporting to Brazil and filling all this paperwork when people are buying my wines here, versus a place like South Africa, which I was fortunate enough to go. They have to export their wine around the world because the domestic market is not as strong.
It's funny with Australia. Probably the ultimate of that is California, where they have such a big market. They kind of sort of shrug their shoulders to export. They'll ship some to England, you know, maybe to Hong Kong, but outside that, it's like, I don't need to. You know, the best producers in Australia are like that. They can pretty much sell everything they want there, but they're getting competition as well. So you go to a top restaurant in Sydney or Melbourne and you'll see a lot of imported wines on the list. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, these things are, you know, it's a very well-educated wine market there, and they want to taste. They say, we like this, whatever. Chardonnay is the great white grape of Australia at the moment, no doubt. But, give us Burgundy. They get some Californian wines there too, just purely out of curiosity. Right. They arrive, they're more expensive, but you see them on a lot of wine lists. So they've got competition there as well, which is interesting.
But as an importer in Brazil, how does that sensibility happen for you to say, you know, I absolutely love this, but it's probably not going to sell, or I might not love this, but it's going to sell, and then figuring that out with things that you enjoy and that are commercially, that make sense commercially, and things that you love but maybe don't work then.
I think the starting point is I need to love it.
Okay, cool.
And so I got a pretty broad palette through a lot of sort of experience of stuff. And so every wine that we've brought in, I've loved it.
Cool.
And maybe I loved it at the winery, and occasionally it may not show up here as well. Okay, we're being very honest. But everything I've loved. Okay, so
cool. So you would not bring something that you don't love, but that you think would be a hit. You wouldn't bring it.
No.
Cool.
Because I think, you know, the thing can be a fad or something. I can love something. Now, will I drink it all the time? If I brought a good value Chardonnay, you know, maybe I wouldn't drink it all. But I love it for what it is.
Gotcha.
You know, say like, you know, I wouldn't take it to a special occasion, but I love it for what it is. Some of the wines that we import are our cheapest wines that we love the most. You know, we love the most wines that. When you say we drink the most, which is a good indication. You say you have 3 wines on the table at the end of your dinner. Which one's been drunk the most is a pretty good indication to say totally. This is the wine. So yeah, we love the wines. We both, but we've had a bit of a handbrake on us as well with the better knowledge now of the Brazilian consumer.
Gotcha.
And that's changing because it's very dynamic here because there is this learning process the market's going, which is fantastic. You know, you go to, you know, I was in Holland and there was a lot of guys who just, they knew what they knew and that was it. No new information was getting in.
Right, right.
It was like, I like Bordeaux, I like white Burgundy, and yeah, you know, this is the way they thought. Here, people are on a journey, which is great. And sometimes they surprise you with wines.
Right.
But you can take a couple of bets, but you also need to make sure, you need to say, A, do I love it? Will the market enjoy this? Yeah. And you tick those two boxes, you probably do okay. Yeah.
Right. But would you say that I'm going to assume there is change. There is always, the market is always evolving everywhere in the world. But when you look at when you first started 6 years ago here in Brazil and now, how do you think the consumer has changed over time in terms of their demands, their interests, things like that?
So we focus on lower intervention wines without a doubt.
Right.
But we've never been up for the wild, crazy, you know, horsey, bready sort of style. We don't. It's not what we want. Yeah.
It's faulty wines. We're gonna put it like that. Yeah. It's about being good.
Yeah.
And that's pure.
So the market's evolved definitely to say I don't want that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want that. Okay. I want good wines. Now, our philosophy is the best way to make truly expressive wines at terroir is to use as little additives as possible. Okay. Doesn't mean zero. This dogma of, it must be 0.0, that's gone. That was there 5-6 years ago. You know,
Gotcha.
People would say, what's the sulfite level? It's like,
do you think people
do you like it?
Do you think people got tired of drinking faulty wines or
think so.
or like spending their money and opening a bottle and being disappointed?
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, we tried to avoid that, but when you're dealing with 0.0 wines, it can be hard to.
Right.
I know the guys now who I go, these guys make good wine.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing.
It takes an extraordinarily talented,
exactly,
and I'm gonna say experienced person, to not correct the wine in any way, and still make phenomenal juice.
Yeah.
You know, because anything that goes wrong in the process, if the person is not insanely meticulous, and things go wrong, things can go really wrong really quickly.
Exactly. And also being big enough to know I'm going to need some sulfate. You know, that's an important thing. You know, we're not talking like, you know, industrial wine, but they say this vintage is going to need a little bit of sulfite. Because at the end of the day, I want it to represent my plot of dirt, my vineyard. You know, and that's a big difference from this dogma of must be 0.0.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and the guys are there, but I think they're only the talented guys who have the right place. I mean, you need to have Mother Nature on your side to make 0.0 wines every year. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
I agree.
And you need to be, and you hit the nail on the head. You need to be talented.
Right.
To do that.
Right, because being 0.0 is a choice. Making good wine is not.
Yes, exactly.
So there is that.
But so the starting point needs to be, we talked about my starting point, I need to love the wine. The starting point needs to be from the winemaker, I want to make the best wine possible.
Gotcha.
That's, to me, that's important. Who's doing that? And you see with producers, who's evolving as a producer as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, when you say that, my mind automatically goes to Stumpy, to J.H. Mayer, which I had the privilege to visit thanks to you, and it's so interesting because first time I tasted his wine, I fell in love with his wine. First time I remember, we talked about this already, not only his Chardonnay but also his Pinot to me were the really big hits. And visiting him now, when you talk to him, he's growing his plots, not because he wants to be huge, but he wants to explore new things.
Yes, right.
He's developing his craft. You know, wines that he was making before, I was like, I'm not sure this was the best that I could do, so I'm just going to change it around. And now he's experimenting. You know, he's going to plant Trousseau. It's like, it's insane. This guy is a guy that is clearly ahead of his time, but also I think had to do it without much help from his neighbors because he has no neighbors. He's in the middle of nowhere. Exactly. There's apple trees growing around him, and he's just experimenting. And he's like, okay, I think I've perfected this or close to that. So now I'm going to experiment something new and something new and something new.
How interesting are those guys, though?
It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's like you just go, wow. This.
I mean, him and also Craig from Longa, which is currently an international hit. I'm going to say, anywhere you go in the world, you see Tesla. I was in a little tiny shop in Piemonte, and there were Longa wines. Go to New York, every wine bar has Longa wines.
Cool.
You go, anywhere you go in Europe, people are buying Longa wines. But here's the interesting thing. Around the world, everyone's drinking this. All the cool hip kids in Manhattan are drinking this. And then you come to Brazil, and if you bring this without the proper communication, the wines don't sell.
Exactly.
Because people are not aware of these things that are happening, and they're not aware of the wine. So as an importer, how does that communication go about? And how do you overcome some of those challenges of saying, hey, like, you should be on this because this is really good?
And I'm mindful of that being a gringo as well, not to sort of like shove it down the throats of people.
Right.
But there's people who are connected, they go, oh, you see a raised eyebrow, say, yeah, this is a guy who's doing great work and so forth. We talk about Craig because he was probably the first guy I sort of, and, people would say, oh, yeah, I know this wine. So it was like whispers through the market.
Right.
We're all connected, in terms of, Instagram and so forth, where people want to show these wines. But it's a great marriage for me with Craig, though, because, we talked about Stompy, but, Craig is an extremely thoughtful guy. Stompy's full of energy, South African, he's like this little, sort of pocket rocket moving around. Craig's more... He's full of energy, but it's a quiet... It's
more contained.
Yeah, it's more contained, and he's thinking constantly. So, they're natural wines, but they're just such reflections. He's almost the role model for me, okay?
Wow.
In terms of saying, this is my land, and this is what I want to show what this land can do. And I'm going to do it as naturally as possible, but I do not want to make dirty wine.
Gotcha.
He actually had a few years ago, like some sommeliers show up from Denmark, Pretty cool place in terms of the natural wine. Yeah. And, I'm pretty sure he could sell his entire stock to Scandinavia. Maybe not just Denmark, but like huge fans. But he had sommeliers saying, this is too clean. This is only a few years ago, 4 or 5 years. He goes, you want me to stop trying? Because I'm making the best wine I goddamn well can here at the moment, and you're saying for me to pull it back. He's a lovely guy, but he's a proud guy too, and that was like a red rag. We would say in English, a red rag to a bull. Yeah,
right.
It's like, you want me to stop trying because I'm making the best wine I can possibly make here.
That's so interesting because this is a psalm that to me is clearly looking at his market,
exactly,
in a market where I think I went to Scandinavia last year, and I drank a lot of wine. And of course, I found some of the best natural wine produced in the world in the bars. But there was plenty of opportunity for me to drink the faultiest, dirtiest wines there is. And they're there, and they're selling.
Yeah.
And it's just something that has developed. And I saw that as well recently in Jura, which is also a region that now I think in France became kind of the place for natural wine, I'm going to say. And you go to the wine fairs in Jura, and it's the same thing. You see hipster kids about my age that are some of them onto the best wines they are making in Jura, amazing, clean, delicate wines. And then a lot of people drinking wines full of bread and say, natural wine. And the wine is not good, technically speaking, at all.
So I think in that way, Brazil has really moved forward in a hurry. Because there's still those guys in Europe and Australia as well, like this dogmatic 0-0 approach. If you make the best wine you possibly can, doing 0 sulfates, 0 additives, fantastic. I want your wine, but I want to drink it. But if you're not making good, clean wine,
It's interesting that you say that about Brazil being forward, because I have almost like a sociological theory about that, which is the wine consumers in Brazil are for the most part conservative.
Yep.
And older. Whereas you go to France, you go to Italy, you go to even South Africa. I went to some wine bars in South Africa where there are a bunch of extremely good-looking 25 to 35-year-old people just hanging out, just hanging out on the street, having a glass of wine, which means the youth is consuming wine. You go to anywhere in Europe, it's the same. You go to Argentina, you go to Chile, there's younger people consuming wine. But I think Brazil, because we have so many amazing wines that are imported to Brazil now, but because of the insane amount of taxes that importers have to pay, wines arrive here really expensive, which means most of the wines, these fine wines, they get bought and consumed by people that can afford them, which is not the youth. And so you get these people that are older, more conservative, buying these types of wines, and I don't think they have any patience to spend their hard-earned money on an expensive bottle of wine and get something full of faults. So all that hype coolness of the young kids around the world that are drinking that, they're like, no, I'm 45 and I'm opening a bottle of wine with my wife or my husband after a long day of work, and I don't care about your natty philosophy. I want to drink a good bottle of wine.
I get you. But you made an interesting point. Every country you mentioned there, wine is treated as a food.
Right, there's also
versus a luxury product.
You're
Argentina, I was there a few weeks ago, as you know, and it was the age of people drinking at the wine bars, and this is a country that has its share of economic issues. But wine and food together, it was just a natural thing for people of all ages.
Right.
And it's a shame. And I don't even think it even helps the local producers here having such high taxes. Because they have their own set of taxes as well. And it doesn't help them perhaps develop as quickly as well. So, I look at markets that produce wine, but also let, wines be imported, at a reasonable price. I think it helps the local market develop as well.
I could not agree more with you, actually.
Like a place that has really low taxes is New Zealand. So you can buy really good imported wine there.
Nice.
So what does that make the local guys do? Just have to roll up the sleeves and,
that's so interesting.
And say, I need to make the best wine I possibly can.
That's so, and they do make pretty good wine.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's just they have a tax per bottle. Okay, so you can bring in
really fine wine.
Yellowtail from Australia, or you can bring in, Dom della Romane Conti, and the tax per bottle is the same, or was. My data might be a bit
gotcha. Well,
off there,
that's really interesting. But do you think that in the last, I'm going to say 6 years because we're talking in that time frame, do you think your clients are becoming younger or older?
We're all getting older, so there's a static point there. I have seen some younger people coming in, but a lot of that may be through also the restaurant side of the business, where they're super passionate guys, and you can see they're on a real learning curve. But I think the market's not as young as what we would like.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we would like to continue. You talk to other importers, and we should all be about the same thing, as about helping grow the market, making this more attractive to a broader set of people.
Right.
Because I love you bankers, I love you doctors, but there's a broader market out there where there's a lot of people on a wine journey, and that may start with buying very commercial wines, but then
most people do.
And which is good,
I've been there.
It's always that's a good moment. That's always a good moment for everybody in the wine industry, when somebody buys a cheaper wine. A younger person says, "Let's have wine," and they go, "Yeah, this is okay." then they have a better wine. And then they kind of move along and say, why is this wine better than this other wine? Well,
Gotcha.
You know, somebody made it with a bit of care. They didn't put the 70 additives that can be added into a wine in the United States of America, for example. I don't know the number in South America. But they start to see, and then they start to peel back the story behind the wine.
Right.
Because you are spending quite a lot of money here on, a wine, yeah? You want that wine to be as good as possible.
Right.
Yeah?
Right.
And I think that's a journey people can have to say, well, why is this wine better? Well, it's organic, it's biodynamic. These grapes are from this part of this region in wherever, and they make really good, I really like that. And that's kind of the journey we want those people to go on, to understand, I like wine, and I like this wine, why?
Gotcha.
And feel comfortable in discussing that. That's still an evolution here.
I
where you
cannot
get
agree.
a group of people and you get one person, hate to say it, it's usually a man.
Yeah, true.
Who has the one true opinion.
Right.
Yeah?
Right.
And you see everybody else sort of like, okay.
Yeah.
No, I think the evolution for Brazil and for new wine markets is to say, actually, that wine, not so good. I like this wine because of it could be this wine, whatever wine, but the confidence to express, yeah.
Right.
We've talked about wines, and you don't always agree on stuff, yeah.
Right.
And I actually think that's part of the beauty of it. Yeah.
I cannot agree more, because otherwise it would be something that could be just learned reading a book, and it's not.
Exactly.
It's not.
It's a very good point.
It's not. But the thing is, the reason why I asked that is because if your clients, if your clientele is getting younger, is because, to me, it's very hard. And this is something that I was watching an interview with Jero, and he was saying that it's impossible for you to look at wine without looking at price. And that kind of stuck with me, because I go back to that point of price and value. And to me, Wines4U does an extraordinary job picking wines that are affordable. When I think of wines that go up to $250 to $100 reais, which is about $40.
40 US, yeah.
40 US dollars. To me, you guys are on another level.
Well, that means a lot to me and to my wife as well, because that's part of is to say, wow, we've got to deal with all these taxes.
Yeah.
Find something really good to show these people.
No, it's amazing what you guys do, because with 200 reais, you can actually find something at Wines4U that is quite good. I mean, quite good. And I say that because when people ask me, it's like, okay, these wines that you're recommending that cost 200 reais, like, do you drink that? I was like, yeah, I actually have a lot of them in my cellar.
That's got it. It's the empty bottle philosophy.
Exactly. I was going back to that, which is when clients ask me, is it good? My immediate response is, well, I'm recommending it. So yes, I do think it is good, but because I'm not selling the wine, I'm just recommending the wine. But the second thing is, most of the times that I recommend these wines from Wines4U, I actually have them in my cellar. You know that, you know. Because when I think of wines, when I think of Wines4U and the value proposition, I think of you're still figuring out your wine path, and you're going to taste amazing things, and Wines4U will offer you those things later on as well. But if you're trying to spend between 150 to 50 reais, I mean, dig in, because it's not like there's 1-2 good wines. There's like 15 good wines.
That means a lot to us, and we focus on value in the truest sense. Okay, so it's not just about being cheap. At that price point, does this wine really offer good value? And that can be anything. I mean, you could have, whatever, a Richebourg. If somebody's off, this is off the charts price-wise, but there's one or two producers that I know that I go, well, hang on, I don't import them, but I go, well, for this wine, this is bloody good value.
Right.
So it can go right through the scale. I think you pay a lot for a label. honestly. You know,
Totally.
And there's beautiful wines. You've had some beautiful wines this week that I've seen.
Yeah.
But you pay for the label as well.
Of course.
You know, and that's the reward for that person doing wonderful work. But, you know, whoever buys that wine starts at a higher price in euro.
Yep.
You know, and then everything gets added on, and you're here at the end of the day and you go, I must really want that wine to pay this price. Yeah.
Right.
That's cool. People, you know, I'm amazed by the passion of wine lovers, you know, and the money they'll spend here in Brazil, because they're super passionate and they want to drink that wine. Yeah. So that's what we try to provide is value throughout the whole range. Yeah. To say, okay, this wine, yeah, you know, but you really got to work back from the answer to say, oh, this needs to sell at this price.
Gotcha.
You know, and then to do that, what do you need to do? What does this wine need to be?
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's a challenge for all of us. Yeah, importing. Yeah.
But that's from the numerical standpoint, so it makes sense commercially speaking.
Yeah.
But how does Wines4U hunt and find these producers that most people here in Brazil probably don't know before you bring them?
Yep.
Wines that are from, you know, tiny producers like this one you just described.
So
how does the company find these pockets of value, I'm going to call them, in order to bring them here?
So I think it's a couple of things. Some good friends that I've made over the years, you know, and it's funny, you know, even people I knew. I haven't lived in Hong Kong for 12 years, but there's a couple of guys there who became masters of wine, you know, and you know, it's impressive from an educational perspective.
It is impressive.
It's impressive, but they're both, more importantly, really good people. You know, a guy and a girl, and they will send me a message out of the blue. I just had this wine.
That's so cool.
You need to go and find it.
That's so cool.
So that's a market where the whole world's wines get to. Australia, you know, guys who have importers, sommeliers, you know, that I've known over the years. And when I go back, they go, wow, yeah, I thought about you the other day. And then, you know, try this one. So that's
so cool.
Yeah, that is cool. And that's, most people in wine are good people, yeah?
I tend to agree with you, actually, yeah.
There's some pricks.
Like everywhere.
Like everywhere. But I think, you know, it's beyond the 80-20 rule, yeah?
I agree.
There's, you know, the arseholes are pretty limited. They get found out over time.
I tend to agree with you, actually. Yeah. But it's so interesting that I think wine, this is something that I didn't really find in other industries, is that you can be connected to someone else because of the wine, regardless of their age, their sex, their gender, their nationality, whatever.
Exactly.
And you see that because, you know, for us professionals, people that work in wine, we're always traveling, and we go back to the same restaurants and we talk to the same somm. And everywhere we go, and the guy recognizes us, and or the somm woman recognizes us, and the producer is the same, and then you make these connections, and you are making this connection to the other person, but the real bridge is the wine.
Yeah, exactly.
And people drink a wine randomly 6 months later, and they think, and you know, you drink a wine and you say, I just thought of this person, because you somehow your mind connects this taste that you had with something that person reminds you of.
It's a very powerful transporter.
It totally
takes your mind there. You know, you. I mean, the classic thing is the holiday wine. Yeah, you have it on a holiday and you come back, you know, and it sort of takes you there, and it may not be as good, but when you're professional and you go there and you see these people, and like you know, I look at the label and I just go back and go, wow, these guys took me up here. They showed me the different soil types.
Totally.
And it's just, it's in their blood, and that passion comes through when you see it, and it's sort of like, that's a journey that, you know, wine lover, I think all wine lovers go on, yeah? You know, it's, well, you know, maybe it's just people who love labels, stick with the labels, but, you know, there's even the great expensive labels, there's people making the wine as best as they possibly can.
Totally.
Like, you know, like, so, you know, but when I love it when I see a real, these guys are beyond farmers. They're quite sophisticated people, but they're farmers who have traveled.
In the sense of way of life.
Yeah. They they cooked a lovely meal, and there was like, the food goes really well with like Southeast Asian.
Yeah.
The wine, goes well with Southeast Asian really well. And they cooked some stuff Vietnamese.
Wow.
I was like, wow, this is pretty cool.
Oh, quite interesting, huh?
You know, kind of like in the deep country. Talking about the path of the fine wine journey, or the wine journey, let's say. That's when you start to realise that you're falling under the spell of wine, I suppose, but you're getting those stories behind the wine.
Right.
You're getting this message. It's not some thing that you bought at a supermarket and you've gone, oh yeah, it was okay. You're getting that. If you travel, I think there's also very good communicators, and I put you right in that box where, you help people transport them to this part of the world. Yeah.
Right. Totally.
So you start that there's more than just the bottle,
right,
and the juice inside the bottle and the label. There's a whole story which can transport you, and I think that's the beauty of wine. I love, some spirits and so forth, but I don't think they're quite as transparent, a mirror of where they're from as wine is, and that's why I keep going back. I love other stuff, like a mezcal. I love. I'm quite into those, but for me, I haven't been taken to that journey of looking at this wine and knowing exactly where it's from, and the vineyard and the aspect, the sun, everything. Yeah, it's all there, and it can sound. If you're not into it, it can sound quite contrived.
Yeah.
But when you get it,
you get it. Yeah, totally. And one thing that I've felt throughout these years is that when you meet someone, when you meet the producer in person, you actually understand the wines, especially when you're talking about natural wine, obviously. Natural wine in the more general sense, not 0.0. When you meet the person and you understand them as a person, you understand the wines better. Yeah. Because wines have personality, like people do.
Exactly.
And if a wine has personality and it's made by a person, it's probably going to reflect the personality of the maker. In some way. Yeah. Somewhat like a kid reflects the personality of his or her parents. And it's so interesting that when I say that, I go back to my visit at Mafre, which cool. is, nice. By the way, Andrea, big hug to you, my friend. Which is crazy because I met him. By the way, people at home, Mafre is a young winemaker in Piemonte who makes Langhe Nebbiolo Barbera, Dolcetto, and is about to make a Barolo soon. And now he's making a Langhe Bianco as well. Langhe White. But I met him. I went to visit him, and we walk into his vineyards, and he starts talking, briefly about him, and he says, I'm pretty obsessed with this stuff. I wake up and I think of wine, and I spend my day thinking of wine, and I go to bed and I usually dream of wine, and then I thought to myself, like, we're gonna be friends for sure.
Well, that's a clear message. I need to know this guy's wine.
Exactly.
Straight away when you see that level of there may not be thinking like an importer, it may not be a great fit for this market. But I want to drink that wine.
Totally.
I'm not saying Mafre is beautiful wines, but I've been to like some producers where the vineyards are fantastic, and you need to separate the heart and the head, because the heart immediately goes, oh wow, this is spectacular. There's like rabbits, like life, biodiversity everywhere, and you go, these guys are going to make great wine. That's also a challenge for the importer. Yeah, they will, but will people buy it at the other end as well? So, but I mean, that's a real part of the journey when you start to see the people behind it. You see the vineyards. You understand more about it, and it's a nice excuse to go and travel.
It's a great excuse to go and travel. The problem, I'm going to call it, which is not a real problem, is that now when I think of traveling without that component, I think 2 or 3 times before actually, going on it, because I'm like, I'd rather be visiting winemakers.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I have this on my sort of list to go back to Southeast Asia, where I spent a lot of time traveling around. But, the wine, Hong Kong's got good wine to drink, but the vineyards aren't there.
The vineyards aren't there, which, they might soon, maybe. I mean, I was in France for a month last month, and I tasted 3 Japanese wines that were off the charts good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I was amazed.
So
I kid you not, maybe top 5 of the wines that I had the entire trip.
Yeah.
And on this trip we had like 1,000 wines or more. Because
But anything the Japanese do, they're going to do it really well.
I remember tasting the first one and I was like, this is pretty good. The second one was maybe the best wine of the trip.
Cool.
I mean, it was just insane.
And I'm not sitting here totally surprised. I've had a couple when in Australia with sommeliers who go, show it to you blind.
Yeah.
And and you go, I have no idea what this is, but it's bloody good.
It's pretty amazing.
And then they go, oh yeah. And then I spent a fair bit of time in Japan. Everything they do as well as they possibly can. Yeah. I love that aspect of their culture.
Yeah.
So they're going to have wine. It may not even be the perfect place to grow grapes, but they'll make it as close to perfect as they possibly can.
It was pretty amazing.
And it's cool.
It's so good for people to taste those things.
Yeah.
And there are several things that you have to travel in order to experience, which is one of the reasons why I've been traveling so much. But there's one thing that I think is super important that you guys do, and I think some other importers do as well, which I think is to the benefit of the entire market, which is, I think over the last year, you've organized several tastings around Brazil, Rio, São Paulo, where you invite some people, mostly professionals, some clients as well. And you open the wines and you say like, here, taste our wines. Because and that to me, what that screams is, we believe in our wines and enough that we're gonna open them for you. Because we know that after you taste them, like you're gonna feel what we feel about this wines. So how has that been? Do you think it's a good strategy? Like what's the philosophy behind going?
I think with our wines, it's needed. It's because because it's not always the obvious, label. Say, hey, we've got this wine, which everyone goes, oh, fantastic, I'm going to buy that. And that's all valid and everything. But we need to share the passion. That's why we brought this wine, really, because Andrea, who's my colleague, and we were talking about it, and she goes, the wine I drink, and whenever I drink it, I go, wow. And the market goes, That's a great difference between
right.
And I said, yeah, I'm with you totally. And I said, especially now, it's gotten better and better. And I mean, this is a wine you can drink it by itself. You put it with the right food.
Very happily, by the way.
And it's hedonism. But it's it's beautiful. It's sculpted as well. But this is a wine that you can drink, pop and pour, as we would say.
Yeah.
Or keep it, however long you want. But either way, you're going to love that wine if you come with an open mind.
Right.
And that's probably another challenge in terms of people's journey is to. I love people who are new because they do have a completely. I like this. Cool. And it may not even be a wine that you personally love, and they say, oh yeah, I really love this. That's cool. I say, well, try this. If you like this, try this, and it might be something maybe with a little bit more care, a bit more love. And, sometimes they go, I don't get the difference. But sometimes they lean in and they go, wow, this is really interesting.
There is that click.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a click.
So showing wines to people is important for us.
Does Wine4U sell to restaurants currently?
Yeah.
And wine bars as well?
Yeah.
I was going to say, because I think, so because of our market, taxation, logistical problems and everything else that goes along with that, Brazil has become a country where wine shops don't exist anymore.
Yep.
I mean, you have, a few and scattered around the country, and that's it.
Yep.
Most people decide to buy directly from the importer or at restaurants.
Yep.
So one way where importers nowadays can showcase their wines is through restaurants.
Yeah.
is through wine bars that sell wines by the glass.
Yep.
So, what is what are some of the politics, some of the philosophy behind selling to restaurants and wine bars, and how important is that to you?
Look, it's important to us because even though the Brazilian government doesn't see it, we see it as food. Yeah. So it's part of what a good meal constitutes a good meal for me. Yeah. You have a lovely plate of food that matches with it. That is one area I've seen the quality, the capabilities of the professionals in the wine industry improved a lot.
Gotcha.
Like incredibly, which is because there's a lot of, are they equal to maybe the best sommeliers in some of the other cities? Some are. And I promise you next year there'll be more who have that capability. So that's improving, and they're really thinking about food and wine matching, which, I enjoy. So there's a part of a passion play there with restaurants, is that it means a lot to us. But there's no, the profit's much lower to sell to restaurants, but it's important to show your wines.
Gotcha.
So good places with people who understand and they're passionate too. So it's part of their wine journey to say, I love this. Sometimes it can be the chef who chooses the wines, but a lot of the time it can be a sommelier who say, this guy's making fucking fantastic food.
Right.
We're not going to drink this, corporate bullshit.
Right.
We're going to drink something that really is A, good wine, B, matches these plates of food.
Right.
And I've seen that really improve. Yeah.
Interesting, because to me, wine has the ability to elevate the entire experience.
Absolutely.
But for the longest time, I think most restaurants looked at wine as a cost.
Yes.
And not as an investment.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not something that we're going to elevate the customer's experience and we're going to charge for that.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to gain in the process.
Yep.
The customer having a better experience, us financially, of course, the importer selling more. But they see it as, this is something that I kind of have to have.
Yeah.
And this is costly to us. So if we can put whatever bullshit wine we can in here and sell it with a bigger margin, we'll do that.
And I've seen a couple, not many, restaurants take that choice.
But I think it's changing.
Yeah.
So slowly, but surely.
My point was that those guys who made that choice, it hasn't been good for them.
Huh.
They're better off having interesting wines. Yeah, they need to make money, and they needs to sit on the wine list at a price that the customer's not going to have a heart attack. Yeah.
Right. And also can't afford.
Yeah.
There's also a matter of ability to be able to. Yeah.
So, but when you have a really good wine, which we call wine is food, but when you have a really good wine that matches the food, it's a win for the for the restaurant. They've elevated that experience, as you said, but it's a win for the importer as well. I love to see when I'm sitting in a restaurant and someone takes the photo of the front and the back label, because they're going to go looking for that wine. And just the way the taxation plays out here makes wine shops difficult.
Totally. No, totally.
Really difficult. Where and that's changed a lot too in the last few years. Basically, it's there's lots of good importers around, and it's hard to put another layer in there.
Right.
It's like we want to, these wines are not coming here cheaply.
Right.
So we need to be as efficient as possible. So.
No, I agree. I agree with you. But also when I say about the pairings in restaurants and being able to showcase, it's because to me, it's also a challenge for the importer, because a good pairing will go a really long way in terms of the food and the wine.
Exactly.
A bad pairing, on the other hand, will destroy both. And I used to do I like the analogy where I say, a good pairing happens when 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah.
And a bad pairing happens when 1 + 1 = 0.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but the thing is, as an importer, sometimes you come with a beautiful wine, and how do you navigate that risk that the
Yeah.
restaurant is not going to do a good job, or is it possible for you to talk to the restaurant and try it out and suggest things and say, like, you know, try this out, try this with that you make that I love,
Yeah.
and it's going to be an elevated experience.
That issue we've seen less and less because the quality's getting higher.
Like
that real sort of car crash wine food match.
Right.
You don't see very often. Now, I don't. And maybe I don't go out far, but we visit, Camilla and I visit our customers, yeah?
Right.
And, you know, maybe some people that we want to work with,
Right.
you know, and I don't look and go, ooh, that's a terrible match. 5 years ago I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of went, and maybe I didn't even go to that point to say that's going to make our wine look really bad, but it's true. You know, you sort of get this feeling like, oh, that's not a good match, guys.
Yeah.
You know, that
doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Where now, yeah, at times I've been, and this is what the beautiful thing of having a good sommelier is, you get surprised.
Right.
You know,
right.
you go, oh, this wine with this. Yeah, let's try it.
Didn't think of that, but
yeah, that works. That works. Yeah.
Hell
There's
yeah.
a couple of sommeliers. I think where I'd love to see the market go of you know the restaurant going wine loving public is to walk in with sommeliers and be able to say, I'm in your hands.
Right.
We've talked about that. You know, there's a few here who I go, I have no doubts. Yeah, I walk in and say, surprise me.
Right.
And, you know, and do it all blind. I like I have no problem being wrong. Yeah, I've been wrong quite a few times in my life. Yeah.
So have I. So have all of us. By the way,
that was an understatement, by the way. But yeah, it's like, you know, that's where I'd love to see the wine and food
go,
where people feel so confident. You know what? We're going to go out to restaurant X, and we're going to have a great time. And I have no clue what I'm going to have, but I know it's going to be good. It's going to be super interesting.
Nice.
That's sort of like, that happens in a few places, but yeah, I'd love to see that happen more and more. Where, you know, the sommelier feels emboldened in partnership with the chef to say, we're going to provide a great experience here. And I really think wine is the beverage to do that. Yeah, I've had great matches with beer and spirits as well, but nowhere near as many.
And I don't think, and I'm not obviously shitting on beer and spirits, but it's just not as profound, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
there's
agree.
There's a deeper connection. Yeah. There's a deeper vibration. It's just on another level.
It's that reflection of where it's from.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think sort of resonates through the whole experience. Yeah.
That's so interesting to hear. And to top things off, when you think of Wines4U and you think of the current market and you think of where the market is going, and where the company is going, if things happened the way you wanted them to happen, hypothetically, where would Wines4U go or be in the next few years?
So we'd be serving an ever more curious public.
Okay.
Yeah. To say, yeah, I've enjoyed this. If you like X, you like Pinot Noir, you try this, and this, and you have people who lean into that and they really enjoy that. I think that would be good for us because we sort of work with that sort of mindset to say, hey, you know, like I think, for example, Sonso can be fantastic.
Right. I've had some amazing ones in South Africa, for example.
In that light red space,
yeah.
You know, where to say, okay, if you like this, try this, and this. Yeah. So expanding curiosity of the market, I think would be, you know, what we try to help provide there. And I think you're doing a great job in terms of showing people,
thank you.
Hey, that you step out of the classics. And I know you love the classics, but you also realize there's a big wine world out there.
Right.
And we want people to come on the journey with us, I suppose. Gotcha. That would be, you know, it's what we've always wanted, but, you know, so our true north is the same, but we see a market evolving, becoming more curious, becoming more sophisticated. And, yeah, I think that part of that journey...
And becoming more curious, too.
Yeah.
Becoming more curious.
Curious, absolutely. Yeah, this curiosity is like, right, you know, that's part of the journey we want to help people take. Just say, like I remember in Hong Kong there was like 100 grape club, to taste wines from 100 grapes,
Whoa.
And and we sort of knocked that off a couple of years into being there, but it was cool, to say, okay, if that's the example of X grape, maybe it's not for me, but others were like, this is bloody good. How do I find more of this? So it's cool. So more curiosity. You need to be prepared to experiment. And what I like to think, what we started with was, great importers in North America, for example. You turn the back of the label, you see their name on it. You say, I know this wine at the very least is going to be interesting. And it's a really good version, if not the best version of its type.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I want that confidence in with the clients here in Brazil.
Gotcha.
For Wines4U.
Oh, that's lovely to hear. Thank you for such an amazing talk, and
cool, man.
It was a pleasure.
It was always a pleasure. Cheers, man.
Cheers.